Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And I'm so excited. We have Sherry Price of Epic You. And I just love her website, epicu.com, because that is what we all want to do, right? We want to become the epic version of ourselves. So, Sherry, welcome.
Thanks, Chantel. I'm excited to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about your story and kind of a little bit about who you are.
Oh, so I am a pharmacist. Now I don't work in that realm anymore. Pivoted around 2017 because my backstory is I was running a successful company, um, and would de-stress at the end of the day with some Chardonnay. And so through that process, it became this habit that I would just want to do after work, after a stressful day to unwind before doing mommy duty and dinner duty and all the things. And it just felt like, just a perfect transition. And after doing that for a while, then, those two glasses become a third glass, becomes the bottle, always stopping at the store for it and just over drinking to the point where it just stopped feeling good and healthy in my body. And as a healthcare practitioner, I knew it wasn't good for me. I didn't want to progress to becoming full-blown addict. So I really wanted to cut back. And the traditional ways out there just wouldn't work for me because even when you go to these 12-step meetings, they say they're anonymous, but you're there in physical form. And I was just so worried about my professional reputation being ruined and not being able to gain employment. And after working so hard, if you're caught with any of that stuff in the healthcare field, that stuff can certainly jeopardize your career. So I wanted to take care of it in a confidential way, like really confidential, like nobody had to know. And so I found a coach who helped me cut back, was not interested in stopping completely at the time. And she really helped me cut back with tools. And once I discovered that, I was like, wow, this has dramatically not only changed my overconsumption around wine, it actually changed the way I parent, the way I talk to myself, the way I treat myself. It improved so many areas of my life that I'm like, wow, I want to do this now for other women who are like me, professional, suffering in silence, and feeling like the messaging out there around overindulgence is not exactly fitting the mold that we can see ourselves actually partaking in. And so then I started Epic U and really focused the first few years on alcohol and reducing alcohol. And funny thing to me was a lot of people would join because they would say, I want to reduce my drinking because it's adding weight to me. I'm having the muffin top. I'm gaining weight. And I think if I cut back on drinking, they didn't really want to cut back on drinking. What they really wanted was to lose weight, and they thought by cutting back on drinking, that was the means. Now, some of them wanted to cut back on drinking, but it was usually tied to like, this is not making me feel good. I'm not sleeping through the night and I'm noticing weight gain. And so then I started moving into the direction of helping women with their hormonal health, with the transition in midlife, because alcohol doesn't serve us well. It never really does serve us to the degree that we want it to. It has some benefits, right? Liquid courage that we fall into the belief and the socialization, which is always fun. But then there's the consequences of it long term, which we don't feel good the next day. So that is my evolution of, pharmacy, then to coaching around drinking less alcohol, and then really doing these habit changes for women so they can feel epic and at their best.
So, one of the things that you also do is helping women with mastering menopause. And so, a lot of people, they don't even realize that they are in menopause and aren't putting two and two together. So they have all these symptoms, right? And they're like, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. Like I have one of my friends who she has just had like surgery after surgery because she's just constantly her joints, she's having like muscle breaks and stuff like that. I have other friends that, they're getting a lot of headaches and some heart palpitation and hot flashes. I think people know, right? Like when they
Yes.
when they think hot flashes, they think, okay, menopause. But there's other things that they have symptoms of that people can experience, right? And they are not putting two and two together that maybe this is premenopause or maybe they're going into menopause. Talk about that.
Yeah, actually, I give some talks locally here in my community around mastering menopause. And, when you look into it now, we used to think of those three classic symptoms that really define menopause, where we get vaginal dryness is a big one, or painful sex, hot flashes, and then the night sweats, right? Those are the three women are trained to think about, oh, when these three happen, then it's menopause or perimenopause. But when you really look at it, there's like over 90 symptoms that can occur. 90. So I have some girlfriends who like have these just non-classical types of symptoms, and they weren't linking them to perimenopause, menopause transition. So it could be ringing in the ear. It could be some people get these electric shocks down their arm. Like you mentioned, it could be joint stiffness or soreness. It could be all of a sudden spicy foods aren't working for me, or I get up and burp in the middle of the night or have GERD. And that never used to happen to me. So food intolerances can happen, changes in bowel habits. Um, we could see rashes and all of a sudden, like almost like a histamine reaction where we see more like allergies starting to occur around the 50s or around that time, late 40s. So many different changes that I don't think we're trained as women to hear because we've been forgotten about in the medical community, and we haven't been really looking at this period and this transition as a time that we really need to focus on our health so that we can preserve it for that last half of our life. Or we used to think it's a third of our life, but now we're living potentially longer with all of this technology that's coming out. So this could be actually half of our life that we spend without a menstrual cycle or in that menopausal time frame. So how you set yourself up now and noticing how your body's changing, noticing the symptoms that are occurring. Like you said, the headaches, right? A drop in estrogen causes migraines for some individuals, and they've never had headaches or migraines before. So there are a lot more symptoms than those classic three that we hear about so much. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think the more discussion we have around mood swings, we know that, but like some people really, really get tearful. And then they have high highs and low lows, and they're like, what is going on with me? I was doing fine, and all of a sudden I'm crying and I don't know why. So just knowing that there's so many symptoms other than those big classic three or four that we learn is really helpful for people to say, okay, my body is speaking to me because it's changing. And that's not a bad thing. It's just recognizing it's changing. And if our body is speaking to us differently, I think that's a surefire way to say, I need to be treated differently. Something needs to change. Otherwise, these symptoms are going to keep getting worse.
I don't know about you guys, but I am stressed. And if you're feeling overwhelmed this holiday season, then I get it. With all the family get togethers, it is just a relentless source of stress. But anyway, there is something that I've got called Stress Guardian, and it's actually made by Bioptimizers, the people who make the magnesium breakthrough, which I love, love, love. But anyway, they are literally made this new product. It has 14 adaptogenic herbs, and it just regulates your stress. I just actually took some right this second, and it's awesome. If you go to stressguardian.com/wasteaway and put in waste away for 10% off your first order, it's stressguardian.com/wasteaway. Go there now.
So talk a little bit about some of the tips. Like give us 5 things that you have done either with your diet or with maybe creams or anything like that that you have thought has really helped master that menopause to help you to take it to the next level.
Yeah. So first of all, recognizing that our food system, and I know you've had guests on your podcast talk about this food system is really toxic. I was not educated in pharmacy school, and I know many physicians aren't educated either about nutrition, how to read a product label. And I'm just not talking about the 3 macros, protein, fat, carbs, right? But really understanding the chemicals in these ultra processed foods and cleaning those up to the best of your ability. Now, look, we're recording this and it's around Halloween time. There is a place for special indulgences. I always make room for special indulgences, but it's not how I'm going to treat my body every day or most of the time, just because my body's going to start to tell me that didn't feel good. You don't feel optimal today after what you did yesterday, or even an hour or two after you eat it, you might not feel optimal. And so I'm listening to my body and I'm understanding how to navigate the food system here in America, because a lot of the products out there are not creating health, they're creating disease. And so I follow a lot of people on Instagram. I follow a lot of podcasts talking about this because I want to be informed. I'm sure that's why you started your podcast, was to inform others about how to stay healthy. Because once you get out of college, unless you're doing this research yourself, it's just easy to fall into the norm out there. And the norm out there, I think, is not healthy. And stats tell us it's not healthy. When we have 88 to 93% of the adult population that is not metabolically flexible. And if you're not metabolically flexible, you are not burning fat. So you're just accumulating it. And then you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, it's me. And how do I fix this? And so getting the right information is super important so that you can maintain and optimize your health. So I think looking at the foods you're eating is critical. Looking at, the toxins we're consuming. So I like to think of inputs and then outputs. So inputs, what we're consuming from a food standpoint, would be a big one. Also in that category, another big one would be just how are you taking care of yourself mentally? What are the inputs there? For myself, around election time, the news, a lot going on, the chaos in the world, I have to be sensitive to how my brain is filtering all of this. Is it going into fear-based? Is it going into, oh my gosh, we're doomed, or there's no good people out there, right? Because we get inundated with the messages that sell and keep us addicted and keep us scrolling and keep us engaged. And so, of course, it's designed with that survival mode, like, oh my gosh, what else is happening? What else is going on? And so you stay on these platforms longer. And just notice when you're engaging in those platforms, how is that serving you mentally? So the mental inputs, not just the food inputs, but also the mental inputs. And do you want to put parameters or boundaries around those so that you do stay informed, but you don't become fearful and scarcity mindset and dreading the day, or feeling like, what's my purpose if, I don't know, X, Y, and Z happens? So I think guarding your mental state is critical. Our modern day society has evolved much quicker than our brains have. And so we really need to protect our brains, right? From those inputs, plus, food affects our brain and our mentation as well. So making sure that we are using food to optimize, to not get Parkinson's, to not get dementia, to not get all these chronic diseases that so many of us are fearful of getting, because a lot of us are dealing with older parents that have them. And we're like, wow, we see how debilitating they are. And I don't want to be in that same category. So from inputs, it's food. Another one would be mental inputs. And because living in our lifestyle nowadays is chronically stressful, and that will increase our cortisol, I also think we also need detoxing for our brain and detoxing for our body. So that is something that I've increased in my own life, just because information is coming at us so much as moms, as entrepreneurs, all the things that we're doing, businesswomen, businessmen, we're just doing a lot. And so we need stress management techniques in our everyday life. And that can look different for different people, different tools out there. They're from free to ultra pricey, right? But finding tools that work so that you reduce that cortisol. Otherwise, we wind up with stress bod. Stress bod is a term like when you're in stress, your cortisol is revving up and then you just hang on to fat. And we know that really happens in that perimenopause, menopause transition, because we do get an upregulation of cortisol at that time, even if you're doing all the things right. So during that time is particularly making sure you have habits down that are going to reduce your stress. Another area I think is really big besides the inputs, I like to put this one in the outputs. What are we putting out? And so I think of that. It could also be thought of as an input, but like movement to me is an output. Like if I'm eating good, I'm taking care of my mind, movement becomes easier and I want to do it, right? Movement gets hard when we feel bogged down mentally, when we feel stressed out at work, we make excuses like we don't have time for it, and then we don't wind up doing it and we just wind up sitting. And then that doesn't produce the good hormones in our body that it needs and the weight loss hormones that it needs to maintain an optimal weight or keep our weight down. Because you can follow the best diet, but if your cortisol is ramped up and you're not moving, you're just creating an environment where your body's going to want to hold on and store fat. So I think an output is like, are we getting in movement? And you can define that in many different ways. There are ways to optimize it through perimenopause and menopause, but any kind of movement is going to be helpful. So if you're not doing anything, just to start is important. And then once you get started, I recommend that you get targeted so that if you are super busy, that you're doing the things that matter most.
Guys, I just want to interrupt for just a second, and I want you to hear Paul Saladino talk about why liver is so important. And if you don't like liver, we have another option for you.
Your ancestors were eating liver. And the reason that this sort of wisdom has been passed down is because liver is very nutritious. It's basically nature's multivitamin. If you look at the nutrients in meat, they're great. You've got zinc, you got B6, you got B12, you got some K2. But if you look at liver, it really complements what's in muscle meat. And there are many unique nutrients found in organs, specifically liver as a powerhouse of these, that are difficult to obtain outside of liver. Like meat and organs are like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together. They're supposed to be eaten together. The easiest way to eat liver is just to do it raw. If you don't want to eat liver raw, you can cook it. But the reason that I like to do it raw is because there are unique nutrients in liver that are probably somewhat degraded when you cook the liver.
This really is like the most nutrient-rich supplements that you can find, and they are amazing. I have tried them. I absolutely love them. So just go to heartandsoil.co, use the coupon code Chantel Ray, and save you some money there. So talk about a day in the life of Sherry. So what are things that you've just decided, hey, I'm not putting this in my body? I call them red light. Like this is absolutely no way I'm ever going to eat this. This is yellow lights and things I might have every once in a while. I mean, my diet really consists of this, and kind of some of your daily habits that kind of take yourself to an epic level.
Yeah. So for me, I've tried many different things. I think a lot of people have different diets, different lifestyle ways, food programs that I've had food delivered to my house. And I'm not just talking, Weight Watcher kind of foods or Nutrisystem kind of foods, but even, the food subscription services. And there's, hey, no judgment to if those work for you. I just found that my taste buds get tired or I'm just not feeling optimal on them. So for me, I've learned now where I'm at in my life that if I maximize protein, that's the one thing I can do, then I actually feel so much better throughout my day. So that could be steak and eggs in the morning. Maybe I'm not hungry for steak and eggs in the morning, but how can I optimize getting in that 30 to 40 grams of protein in the first time that I break my fasting window? Protein. I also embrace time restricted eating for the most part. Now I'm not so rigid. I get perfectionistic. So I like to think of it 90-10 or 80-20. So I do it most of the time, but not all of the time, because that level of rigidity just sends me wanting to rebel on myself. And when I rebel, I go off course too much. So I like to think of it as the 80-20. And in my really good segments, I could get to 90-10, where I'm following these principles consistently with the protein, time restricted eating. I know some people call it intermittent fasting. Either way, I think those terms are interchangeable. I know you've had Dr. Gersh on here who's talked about how she looks at those definitions. So you just have to find, like, when people are talking about intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, what terminology are they using? So for me, it's to follow Dr. Gersh, which she had already talked about on your podcast, was about, I would say, time restricted eating, because I'm not fasting for more than one day. So that has really helped me feel better. It's helped me balance those chemicals where I'm not like feeling on edge and then crashing. So when I have more protein and when I follow the intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, I'm more balanced throughout the day. I don't have these super crashes of energy or needing a nap, although I'm not opposed to napping. Fully embrace it if I need it. But for the most part, those send my blood sugar level pretty consistent. Another thing I have learned to change my mind on is that stress management techniques are needed. I used to think, oh, those, someday I'll get to it. But I actually will meditate now. I never was a meditator. And I don't know if it's traditional type of meditation, but I sit with my eyes closed and will have music in the background. It's not like I'm trying to clear my thoughts. It's not the forms of meditation that I've been taught in the past or sat in a class. It's not that. It's more like just listening to music and letting my mind wander wherever it goes. I found that to be really calming for my nervous system. And I just really love music. So that works. That type of meditation works for me. Hydration is also huge. When I stay hydrated with electrolytes, I get less sugar cravings. I just don't feel out of whack. So electrolytes have been a game changer for me. I use the company Element. I really, really love that product and I'm drinking it right now. It's delicious. It's easy to get my water in. And I find when I add the electrolytes in, I'm not using the bathroom as much. So I think my body actually stays hydrated because the electrolytes pull in the water into the cell and you're not just flushing it out. Although, you do increase your bathroom runs with water, but not as much as with the electrolytes, I have found. I also found it keeps me more regular. So my bowel habits are more consistent, and I think that's important. Something probably not discussed a lot is bowel habits, because we should be having a bowel movement every day.
And every meal, if you're eating, I believe
Yeah.
if you eat twice a day, you should
Yeah.
you should be pooping twice a day. That
Mm.
is really, really important. If you're eating 3 times a day, you should be pooping 3 times a day. I don't think anyone should be eating 3 times a day. I just think it's too much, but it is really important. I mean, if you look at like my dog, literally he eats, we take him out for a walk and then he poops. And
You're absolutely right.
he's pooping that out, but it's putting pressure. That food is then putting pressure on whatever he ate at the last meal to go ahead and go. But having good bowel movements, I would love, we need to have you come back on. We're out of time, but I do want you to come back. We need to really, I don't think we talk about that enough as in the health space. And I think it's something we need to talk about more.
I agree. And yes, very important for the body to detox.
Well, this has been wonderful. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Yeah. So my website is where you can find out about my programs, Epic U, spelled YOU at the end.com. And then you can also follow me on my podcast, Health Habits and Epic Living. And I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Sherry Price.
Love it. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.